Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And for people that are new to the show, there are lots of ways to listen. Of course, you can listen here live. You can also listen on Friday nights. I'm rebroadcast on a host of other stations. As well as Ed Opperman's Spreaker channel, and you can find me on iTunes and also on Ed's iTunes. I'm also on TuneIn and Stitcher. And we're gonna get, I think Google Play is just about ready to go. I just gotta figure out a few little, quirks and things like that. Of course, on YouTube as well. And you can also just old school download it directly from my website. So lots of ways to listen to the show. Of course, if you want to support me, then you can always become a patron of mine on Patreon. So you can just go to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond. And for as little as $1 a month, you can support me in the work I do. And that, of course, gives you access to the bonus podcast, which I do once a month. And we just had the most recent episode just came out a few days ago, I think, or maybe it was last week. I can't remember off the top of my head. But that was the final in a trilogy of episodes that Tom Secker and I did, devoted to one of our favorite TV shows, the British version of House of Cards, the original version from the 90s. So definitely lots to explore on Patreon and all that. So, I hope people are signing up. I want to just briefly thank Victoria for signing up to Patreon recently. Thank you so much, Victoria. And at a very, we'll have to make a new level for Victoria's donation, because it was a very nice one. And I also wanted to quickly just thank Curtis, who is another patron of mine, who sent me a very lovely email a week or so ago. And Curtis, I will be emailing you back. It's just been extremely busy on my end, with, Thanksgiving and all that nonsense as well. But anyway, we are joined by a good friend of the show, a frequent guest, on my show. I'm a frequent guest on his show. Of course, our good friend, Chuck Ochelli. Chuck, how are you?
Well, Pierce, I'm doing all right. I'm actually at the moment managing the 3-year-old terrorist I live with, but that would be my son. And this is what I do during the day before the sun goes down, and I try and do my thing. But anyway, I lost track of time today on you and everything, man. I don't usually do that. So here we are.
That's fine. No worries. And I think I want to say maybe maybe it was the second or third time we recorded something. Your son was making a whole lot of noise in the background, and I remember people, emailing me and saying, how much fun they like those little, the real life stuff that happens behind the scenes. So hopefully this will be another good episode. But Chuck, I wanted to.
Hopefully you'll stay in a decent mood. You want to say hi, bud? You want to say hi because now you're standing next to me. Say hi. Now we're going to be shy. We're going to be shy. We're putting the head down. Of course. He's going to go chase the dog, probably. Okay. Anyway, be nice.
Well, yeah, we'll see if we can get an interview later on. But
with him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can. Well, yeah, he'd be our guest for the second hour.
Cool.
Well, Chuck, I wanted to have you on because you just recently returned from the 22nd annual JFK Lancer Conference in Dallas, Texas. For people that were sort of wrapped up in the Thanksgiving insanity, they might have forgotten that last Wednesday, November 22nd, was the 54th anniversary of the assassination of JFK. And, of course, in recent weeks, we've seen a large amount of newly declassified documents that have been released. Not just because of Trump, but we can get to that later. So there's been a lot about JFK in the news as of late. And as I said, you just returned from the Lancer Conference. So, Chuck, how was the conference? Give us your review of the JFK Lancer Conference.
Well, very interesting stuff. First, it's hard to keep track of it. I was barely aware of it myself. 24th, actually, Lancer Conference. And interesting stuff there. We had researchers really from just about every generation represented, because Gary Shaw was there, John Newman was there, Carmine Sabastano was there. I presented. You had literally, just about from every generation outside of Mary Farrell's generation, the very, very first people to look into it, being there. Of course, most of the people that were of the older guard kind of knew Mary or whatever, which is interesting because her name comes up again. The Mary Farrell Awards were given on Saturday night. I received one of those myself, for being someone who has advanced the education about the assassination in my particular field, which is independent media. So that's interesting. It was, me, Jefferson Morley, Russ Baker, each got awards, and of course I think John Newman got a Lifetime Achievement Award, which he deserves extremely well. There were other individuals. Randy Robertson was there. Let's see, who else? Well, there was, off the top of my head, it's hard to go now. Let me think.
Andrew Krieg, right?
Andrew Krieg, that's true. Rose Jeremy's son was there. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Rose Jeremy. Marianne Moorman, who was an assassination witness and actually took the Polaroid photograph, which, believe it or not, if you've ever seen a presentation on JFK, I can guarantee you if there was visual aids involved, you saw Mary Moorman's Polaroid. It's a black and white, and it's the image that they literally drew Badge Man out of. So she was there, actually, and taking questions. Of course, Deborah Conway, Larry Hancock, Stu Wexler. It's more than 30 people spoke. And also the guys came back and gave us a report from the mock trial that had taken place in Houston on Thursday and Friday, I think it was. So it was definitely an interesting array of characters giving you a different perspective, and a lot of it having to do with these recent releases. Now, little bit of an update for maybe this is a little bit inside baseball, but I don't care. I'll give it to you, and we can talk about it again tonight, because you're going to do my show tonight.
Yes, of course.
Which we're going to get a little report from Russia during your hour. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. Interesting thing, people have, bandied back and forth these different numbers about the amount of documents which have been released. People are very unaware of the fact that there have been 2 additional document dumps beyond the date, and some people feel like, well, see, there it is. Trump is following through on his promise. He's going to release everything, even though he gave in to a nearly 0-hour submission
request
from
the
intelligence agencies, actually more than one agency, but the CIA primarily. But more than one agency, even the FBI got in on the act, it looks like, requesting, hey, look, we need more time with this, even though they had 25 years to prepare for the document dump. Here's the interesting thing. All these numbers coming out. Oh, well, we released 3,000 files, and there's only 300 more things that are being withheld. I'm going to tell you right now, that's a bold-faced lie. There is not 300 documents being held as the MSM is represented. Nothing to see here. They've just withheld a few things now in comparison. They're not only lying, they're lying by a factor of more than 10, possibly 11, 12, because based on our calculations and known documentation that has not come out, not to mention the unknown documentation, by the way, I'm going to tell you that let's be conservative. There are 30,000 documents that are being withheld at this time. And even if we take out the additional 13,000 that were dropped away, let's see, right before the conference, which was the week before Thanksgiving, that weekend before, right before the conference, we got 13,000 documents that nobody had a chance to go through. guess what? Still, there's over 30,000 pieces that are in government hands that now we have absolutely no way of telling when they're going to release them, because even though the thing is, they can withhold this stuff indefinitely again. All Trump had to do, honestly, is nothing. And all of it would have come out. But that's not the way it went.
Yeah.
So,
and also, just Chuck, I'm sure we're probably preaching to the choir here, but so much hay has been made out of Donald Trump and these documents, and of course, Donald Trump has, portrayed himself as something of a JFK truther, of course, with his accusations about Ted Cruz's father being part of the assassination. And, like the same way that Donald Trump is a 9/11 truther, people buy into this. But the actual release of documents really actually had nothing to do with Donald Trump, correct? I mean, these documents were set to be released at this particular date, and Trump is just taking credit for something he had nothing to do with, right?
Well, point of fact, the law was signed into existence by another president named Clinton. Well, wait a minute. No, hold on. The cabinet agency, which was brought into existence under the executive branch of the government, technically speaking, the Assassination Records Review Board, that agency was brought into existence by Bill Clinton. The law itself was actually signed into existence by George H.W. Bush. Mm. Okay. This is that 25 years I keep mentioning. Yes. Yeah, because 25 years ago, your president was H.W. Bush. And there you go. And then going into the Clinton administration, he actually enacted the law, which had the power of subpoena, but didn't have any sort of consequential actions that could be taken. They could demand during the time that the board existed that they get documents from both public and private hands. That included the agencies, and even the Zapruder film. Hello, Frankie. Was brought into the record collection in a way. But which at great expense, by the way, millions of dollars paid to the Zapruder family. Yet another interesting story there. And the government did not retain the copyright either. Thanks, they donated that along with a copy of the film to the Sixth Floor Museum as a tax write-off.
Really?
So yeah, that's a whole other story. But here's the fascinating thing, right? So this board existed, went out of business in the late 90s. And, Frankie's playing with the dog here, so it's a little distracting. I apologize. But,
no worries.
But the thing is that, all that had to happen here, again, is for Trump to do absolutely nothing. Okay. Like, in other words, if he took no action, all of these things were going to come out as a matter of compulsory follow through on the law and the release process, which was established well over 2 decades ago. And, again, the request, which, some of them, we have evidence that they came in literally at the last hour, that a request could be made to the, president, was made. And there you go. And meanwhile, we're still scrambling to figure out the exact numbers of documents being withheld, because here's the fun part. You can't call the National Archives and say how many documents are classified, because that's classified.
Right.
So
you'd have to put in a very specific request through FOIA and hope that they would respond by saying either this is classified, you can't get it, or we can't find it, which is a very ambiguous. What does that mean? You can't find it? That it exists, but you've misplaced it, or you can't find it, you're never going to get it. So, of course, there's no easy way of actually determining what's being withheld, what's not being withheld, what, is, going through a paper shredder or something.
Well, that's the interesting thing, too, is that there's allegations that there might have been a destructive process that took place once, people stopped paying attention to the ARRB. Now, I don't have any way of verifying that, but I have my suspicions, right? And when we take a look at some of the really literal nonsense, it's making some researchers just, ho-hum a bit. It's making others of us kind of angry. And I'm waiting to see what a very, responsible and meticulous individual like Dr. John Newman is going to say about this, because he stated that we needed to wait through the process. We've gotten some really illegible crap. Okay, that's a difficult word for me to say, sorry. Illegible crap which has come through. We've gotten things that are clearly and absolutely and obviously missing based on the sheets. And meanwhile, you know what? Is there anybody to guide us through this stuff except the crazy researchers who are going to dig through themselves? Guess what? No. What did the MSM show you? Oh, well, there's slightly suspicious stuff here, but nothing to see. And what did the, alleged alternative media do? Look, Hitler's alive.
Yeah.
If you read the document, okay. And hey, we have proof of shots from the front, and we have proof of this. And actually, if you read the document, it's an easy to destroy position. Who was the philosopher that said the best way to make sure that a position is absolutely destroyed is to defend it poorly? I forget. But, it makes a lot of sense. Here's your poor defense, controlled opposition. Go out there and tell them that this is the conspiracy theory so that the rational and observant among them can easily destroy it and we can move on with business. And meanwhile, as I stated, everybody who thought, hey, look, it's all over with, we've gotten everything. And, of course, if you follow Trump's Twitter account, I did everything. I gave you all the documents better than anybody else could have.
Right.
Which, again, he doesn't run the National Archives, and he didn't enact the JFK Records Collection Act. And quite honestly, if you want to get real direct about it, Trump could sign an executive order demanding that all of this stuff be released without further delay. So, but is
if he's to be believed, he could tell us who actually was the mastermind behind 9/11, like he said he would. He could figure that. You could tell us. I'm sure they've told him, and enough. One would think, or if he's the man that he says he is, like you said, he could sign an order, release all of this stuff.
Well, you know what it'll be, though? If we get the same kind of accuracy from him on 9/11 that we got on the JFK case, Ted Cruz's dad being involved, which, by the way, is entirely fictitious. And thank you, Wayne Madsen, for giving us yet another migraine headache. Really, I got a middle finger up for him. I know you can't see it at home, but I got one up for him. Bottom line is that if we're looking for that kind of accuracy out of Trump when it comes to 9/11, then I'm assuming the Democrats did it, and maybe Hillary had commanded the planes strike the towers and whatever. Look, people latched on to certain things. Hey, look, they lied about the Iraq War. Everybody went, because nobody had really said that before who was in a position of authority or could be in a position of authority. So, look, he's going to tell us the truth. I heard everything, man. He's going to get rid of vaccines. He's going to take on big pharma. Meanwhile, what's the first thing he did? Give them a tax break. And he's not so fond of taking on vaccines after all. Oh, no, he's meeting with Bobby Kennedy Jr. You don't understand.
Turns out I forgot all about that.
Yeah, it turns out that's not true. See, it's libertarian bait. It's truther bait. And that's what they've used. And much like a Roach Motel, many of you have been captured in it. And how's that glue feeling? Because it's just the same old crap in a new package. And like I said before, Bush became Bush dark, and the new black became the new orange. And really, the agenda has not changed. And yeah, I know some of that was very racist, what I just said, but this is America, and it does seem to fit. Look, the reality. I'm sorry. I'm going to be brash and brazen about it. Why not? Because we live in a time where we're going to sit here and defend, one guy who is alleged to have been, molesting 14-year-old girls and things. That's okay because he's going to vote for tax reform. But on the other side, the comedian's a bad guy because maybe he had done something inappropriate. And meanwhile, this is the new normal anyway. And let's not even bother to look at the evidence. Let's have people stepping down and giving up on things. Because after all, nobody makes unfounded statements in the media, especially not politicians, do they, Pierce? I'm sorry. Maybe my LSD is wearing off or something. I'm not sure. Sorry, man. I you know what it is? I'm trying to wrap a lot of things around this because it just represents to me the silliness. Like I said, if you follow Trump's Twitter account and you believe everything that comes out of there, he's already taken care of this. It's all over with. The reality, just like, hey, Puerto Rico's still a thing too. And the reality of, hey, there's other people that still don't have jobs, regardless of the fact that they feel better that the country is now in the hands of the smart businessman. And hey, the stock market's doing well, but has that actually changed, your life on a daily basis? I do mean you, the listener. Probably not, but hey, it's all good because as long as you believe it's reality, it's reality. And so long as Orange Julius tells you what's going on, you can certainly follow that particular line of thought. Now I'm going to shut up because you know what, Pierce? I've thrown a lot at you. And I know you probably got some other questions.
Well, I kind of wanted to jump back to some of the documents that have come out, and speaking broadly about this dump of JFK documents, because in the second hour I'm going to get into this cache of Bin Laden documents from the Abbottabad raid, and my thoughts on that and what might actually be happening there. But when we're dealing with something like JFK or like the, assassination of Bin Laden, there is obviously, there are true secrets with all of this. There is stuff that the CIA and the FBI and I assume other agencies forced Trump to withhold or, asked that they be withheld. And then there is also always the possibility of fake documents being inserted into this, documents that might have very little true relevance to what actually transpired on November 22nd, 54 years ago. And that, to me, this Hitler in Colombia thing seems like classic conspiracy bait. That is, I'm not. We actually talked about this, I think, a few weeks ago when that story first broke. Neither of us really had any true explanation as to why this was even included within the JFK stuff. But it does seem like there is some stuff entered in there that is just meant to distract and whatnot. So kind of wanted to get your opinion on that. And then also, there is this amazing story that is kind of, it's been reported in some mainstream publications, but sort of flying under the radar. And that's this idea that they wanted to use Soviet planes to stage false flag attacks within the Soviet Union. So sort of like a tweaked version of Operation Northwoods. I mean, that to me is a huge, should be a huger story, especially given the political context and climate that we're in right now, where, Russia as a whole, it's always the Russians, as if all Russian people are slaves to Putin and none of them deserve to live. And just sort of seeing that, back at the height of the Cold War, we were planning some pretty crazy, very, conspiratorial type, false flag attacks. The fact that Newsweek is now, has an article where that it's okay to say false flag and using planes and all that sort of stuff, obviously allusions to 9/11. But Chuck, I kind of wanted to get your take on, what I was talking about, first this idea of, should we be careful with all of these documents that are out there? Is there stuff that's designed to be kind of a cul-de-sac for people?
Well, okay, let me take this in reverse order because the Russian question is easier. The idea that there's not equilibrium between the KGB and the CIA, and that for every intelligence agency we imagined they didn't have some sort of counterpart, and therefore agencies that did similar things. It just so happens that I think we had more money to work with, quite honestly. Yeah. So we did more, and there are certain things that are not permitted in Soviet society. Of course, at that time, that alcoholism was just fine, but most other things that were, accessible to Americans meant that the agency's darker operations plugged into their society in a different way. So, to be shocked or astounded that anything went on, you can imagine that almost every one of these, alphabet agencies, one way or another, has gone through the Operation Northwoods phase. I mean, to think otherwise, I think would be a juvenile. They've gone through that. They've gone through the idea and have actually committed false flag operations at various points in history. I mean, hey, we could look back to World War I if you like and take a look at the assassination of, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, right? And there's still questions about that. We can look at our own Civil War. We can look at the various assassinations that the CIA had something to do with. And in a couple of cases, some interesting things that have happened in Europe that I can't really tie to American or Western intelligence, but look awfully fishy as well. And that's not to say that the Russians are innocent, or I'm saying that,
no.
As clean as you think we are is as clean as they can be. As dirty as you think we are is as dirty as they can be. And, I think they've actually just been on a smaller scale because, America's all about exporting democracy, which I guess is code for whatever the hell it is we think is American. Because it's not actually democracy if you take a look at the actual definition. But anyway, I digress. Reality speaking back again, when it comes to the JFK stuff, yes, I think there are things that are thrown in there to intentionally distract and be like dog whistles for the conspiracy-minded individual out there, for certain. But I also don't believe that the agencies are efficient enough to clean up enough of their own messes, because in the documentation, we've also found confirmation for things that we've been alleging for many years. Priscilla Johnson McMillan. I keep calling her Patricia. I know why, because I hate the name Patricia. Anyways, Priscilla Johnson McMillan, who was Priscilla Johnson, interesting lady. You've seen her on many a Lee Harvey Oswald documentary, because she indeed was able to interview him when he was defecting to the USSR. And then, of course, coincidentally, winds up being able to talk to him later, and then moves in with Marina Oswald post-assassination to write the definitive book. Well, for years and years, people like me, Pierce, have been saying she's a CIA asset. And, she denied it. I'm a journalist. I'm an author. And her publishers deny it. And PBS uses her, and ABC and CBS, and everybody goes to her.
Every documentary always features her.
Everyone. Turns out, if you take a look at this documentation, we now have proof that she was being utilized, that the CIA literally evaluated her as somebody that would be extremely useful, that they actually turned her down for a job at one point. And then seemed to say, well, we could use her a bit, and we'll use her while she's in the Soviet Union through our contacts in the consulate. Wait a minute. Who else went through the consulate? Lee Harvey Oswald. Looks to me like this guy Snyder, who took Oswald's passport and threw it in a desk drawer, might actually be the contact who told Priscilla Johnson where to find Lee Harvey Oswald to go interview him. So coincidentally, a CIA asset journalist is directed by a CIA cover operative in the USSR to talk to the guy who winds up being the lone nut assassin later on, while she basically gives the guts and glory of the official narrative regarding Lee Harvey Oswald later on to the American public ever after. Isn't that fascinating in and of itself? And now some of these documents actually show it. Another thing, Hugh Ainsworth, I never had any sort of contact with the CIA. Hugh Ainsworth, assassination witness, allegedly, journalist, legendary figure, Dallas Morning News, all that stuff. Turns out he had ties to the CIA. Ready for another one? Okay. Charles Cabell. Does that name sound familiar to you?
No, but I'm not as up on my JFK stuff as I should be.
No, listen, it's real easy to get lost. Once I say it, you'll remember it. Okay, so you know who Alan Dulles was?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the other people asked to resign after the Bay of Pigs was Charles Cabell. Why? He was a higher up in the agency, wasn't he? And somebody that was being held responsible for that disaster. So at the same time that Dulles is being asked to resign, Charles Cabell is. Now, why does the name Cabell sound familiar? It might be because the mayor of Dallas is named Earle Cabell in 1963. The allegation from, us kooky conspiracy theorists for all these years is that maybe, since they were brothers, the CIA might have had, I don't know, a tentacle there in Dallas via the Cabell connection. And here's the thing. Turns out, if you look at the documentation carefully, you can now find a trail for that. And Earle Cabell was indeed utilized as an asset by the CIA. It's unspecified as to what he might have been doing. But, yeah, during that time period, he was. Now, funny thing, when I was leaving Dallas, and I noticed the architecture throughout Dallas. It was really interesting, fascinating. And I'd never taken the time to do this before. So I'm walking to the Greyhound station because, I'm broke. And, I'm walking to the Greyhound station and I noticed that there is a building there that doesn't seem to fit in with a lot of the other architecture. And it is a true story. I did not realize this until I was walking down, the street. And I look up, and what do I see but the Cabell Federal Building? I'm not kidding you. Go ahead, Google Earth it or whatever the hell it is. Go ahead, check it out. It's right there by the Greyhound station, maybe a block away at most. Go ahead and look at it. I'm serious. I looked up to my left, and blind as I am, in big bold letters, the Cabell Federal Building. This is something that tells you a lot. Okay. And I think there's more to be mined out of what the local connection in Dallas was. I don't blame the people of Dallas. I don't necessarily blame the police force. There's over 700 guys. I had a count at one time that might have gone up to 1,000 individuals that could have been working for policing agencies on a local level there. But I'm very sure and confident with the number 700 guys that could have been Dallas police officers or working for the department, et cetera, et cetera. That's not to say that there was like a large contingent of them or a significant number of them that were working for the assassination, that were in on it, if you will. But it stands to reason that there were more local assets involved than we've been allowed to know about. And some of those local assets, I think we have already been misled about, going back to who was that guy now who was alleged to be Badgeman for a little while? Different. By the way, Badgeman is not a tenable hypothesis, just in case people missed that one. It's just no good. And you know what? There is still more to be learned. And I imagine there's some reason why 30,000, let me repeat that, 30,000 documents still need to be withheld 54 plus years later. I'm thinking there's got to be a reason. Now, there's a lot of connective tissue in these documents as well. A lot of cryptonyms were accidentally, I think, released into the collection. A lot of people that are tangentially connected to the agency, like J.C. King and, well, not to the agency, to the assassination in one way or another. Things that are related to David Atlee Phillips, things that are related to, James Jesus Angleton. Some of that stuff is creating some tangential documentation, which leads in interesting directions. Actually, there's a significant portion of files there that if somebody wanted to collect them, they could look at, well, probably Paperclip 2.0, because there's a whole bunch of Nazi guys that were being taken into the agency that were previously unknown, and including a guy who they put in charge of. I love this one. They put in charge of surveillance. Okay, in one of the Soviet bloc states, like surveillance for the agency, who was completely paranoid and thought that he was being surveilled at all times. He was deemed as almost unusable for, intelligence work, but they put him in charge of surveillance under the, new Nazi adaptations. So I thought that was really, really wonderfully ironic. But then again, these are the people who put out an assassination guide, literally, for an internal agency document where it gives you all the specifics about who to hire, how to hire, what types of weapons to use, how to choose a patsy, everything. And meanwhile, one of the passages specifically says, and never commit anything to paper. Yeah, you hear that silence? Never commit anything to – I'm reading it. Okay, I'm sorry. I love the CIA. So when you think about the omnipresent agency that's all powerful, all knowing, and able to operate with absolute efficiency, not always so. Okay, so there's chances for many things here, and honestly, I'm still digging, and so is anybody who's being honest. I mean, even a cursory view of this stuff gives you, I don't know, what would be the psychological version of vertigo. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, it begins to twist your mind around trying to read through this incomprehensible pile of stuff, which is, literally millions of pages by the time you're done cross-referencing everything. So, okay, now I'll shut up, Pierce. I wanted to give people a little bit of hope, though, and fully answer what you were saying.
No, and excellent answer. And I of course, would urge, and, this is so early days. I mean, there's no way that anyone has gone through all these documents. There's no way that everyone has even gone, the documents that I've looked at. I mean, I, again, just sort of browsed them. I wasn't even looking at them with any real sort of, with a magnifying glass, just trying to sort of pick things out. So I'm sure there's going to be, there's tons and tons of stuff for researchers, journalists, and whatnot to kind of go through and pick apart, and and I think we'll start seeing strands of this, as you said, the kind of paperclip 2.0, which maybe that explains a bit why they have some asset in Colombia that claim to know where Hitler was. I mean, maybe that is tangentially connected to all of the Nazis that we were vacuuming up at the end of World War II and into the 50s. So there's a lot there. And another thing I wanted to just sort of let me posit one more thing about this stuff. Sure. When you see things from South America that are connected, one must keep in mind, we remember the Iran-Contra thing, right? And how, it seems as though during the Reagan administration, there was all these guys that we had down there doing all these things that wound up leading into drug running and gun running, right? And then, of course, the other deal with the Iranians and, excuse me, giving over weapons for hostages and whatever. We know about that intrigue, but, you don't just show up in 1981 and say, hi, guys, let's deal coke and guns. There has to have been an established connection to some other people. You don't get in, let's just say you don't get to sit down, which is another thing that refreshed my memory this week. You don't get to sit down with, you don't get to sit down with John Gotti and have him talk to you confidently unless somebody knows who you are, right? You don't get to sit down with Manuel Noriega and discuss exactly what's happening, or, any of the guys who's in one of the other drug running organizations. Doesn't matter. You don't get to sit down and do that because, hi, I'm here to do business with you. I have money. That doesn't work. Okay. You have to establish relationships. So how far back do those relationships go? And how many more things might be uncovered? I mean, remember, without the Church Committee, without the Rockefeller Commission, without the Pike Commission, the American public would probably still have no idea that we unsuccessfully attempted to kill this little guy named Castro on an island called Cuba for years and years.
And also, we committed acts of terrorism, trying to spread, disease, trying to destroy crops, trying to subvert their people. I mean, these are, well, if that was another organization trying to do that to Americans or something like that, we might think of them as, terrorists. But no, the U.S. government did this stuff and had assassination plots. And if you don't believe me, again, internet search. Let's see. Here's a key phrase: ZR rifle. Go look that up if you want. The point is that when you look at the South American connection and, is this Hitler here? It's a picture. This is a snitch informant who's telling us that he heard that there's a guy that should be Hitler. You know what? It's all secondhand hearsay stuff that's being reported. And yes, indeed, there's a guy who looks like Hitler, but wasn't there supposed to be doubles for the guy too? Don't forget. And we do know about the different rat lines and the, what did they used to call that? There was a phrase that went along for those interesting little rat lines that they hid Nazi war criminals with, which, by the way, the Vatican was fully involved with too. What did they used to call that? There was a phrase for it. Pierce, do you remember?
It's escaping me right now.
You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
General blanket. Like when I say paperclip, to be honest, it's not necessarily Operation Paperclip. There's other things going on that you could put right in that little folder of research, though, because, do you think we only went and got intelligence assets from the Third Reich? Or do you think maybe some of the people that work in our pharmaceutical companies? Do you think maybe some of the people that work in, industries like psychiatry? Do you think maybe we got a little bit of medical knowledge? Do you think maybe we got a little bit of who knows what we actually recruited and pulled in and gave new identities to? Meanwhile, again, remember this too, when you're taking a look at the context, right? Certain Warren Commission people knew about all this stuff when they were investigating the Kennedy assassination. This is another reason why it's tangentially connected. You think Alan Dulles and his brother didn't know about this stuff going on? Wrong. And the other thing is, John J. McCloy was the chancellor of post-war Germany, and was sitting there commuting death sentences of Nazi war criminals. In order for what? So they could be acquired. And again, back to the point about the Soviets, it's not like they weren't trying to do the same thing. So it wasn't just an American thing, although I do feel as though American industrialists planted the seeds and they just simply wanted to reap the benefits, and so did our government. But hey, again, I'm a conspiracy theorist. So go ahead, Pierce. I'm sorry.
No, a lot to chew over there. But I guess one thing that just keeps kind of jumping out at me, just in that, I asked you a fairly straightforward question, and suddenly, my mind is already thinking about all the, Nazis and questionable people that, sort of slipped into American society. And that, of course, then raises the question of, how much of our current society was sort of shaped, not just by Nazis, but shaped or at least massaged by, a lot of people, at the CIA. We could talk about the whole sort of cultural Cold War, in terms of films, the influence the agency had in motion pictures, in modern art, in literature, particularly leftist literature at that time. So, there's so many far-reaching questions with all of this, and we're just sort of starting to begin to see some of this exposed in these documents. So, one thing is that how do you feel in terms of how we've kind of progressed? Because in terms of, let's just very specifically with the JFK stuff, because as you said, there's some really huge revelations in here, or at least some huge confirmation that that you're not a kook, Chuck, that what you've been saying all these years is actually totally adds up and is totally backed up by documentation. Talking about some of these so-called, journalists that sort of double as CIA assets, that is a huge thing, and that is something that certainly is it's a serious accusation. I think sometimes it gets thrown around too much, I'm sure you've suffered this. I've been called CIA or Mossad and this, that, and the other thing. Whatever. It's a very a derogatory term that gets thrown around a lot. But there are instances where it's totally 100% true, and there's a much larger reason for that. So how do you see this? From a slightly higher up view? Not talking as a JFK researcher, because sadly, I don't see these documents making quite as big an impact on the general public as one would think. And my sort of knee-jerk reaction to why that is well, because, everybody is too angry at Trump, and the sort of this miasma that has followed the Trump presidency is just, it still permeates. You know what I mean? People are either so angry or they're in such denial that they're just happy. Everything is wonderful. And they're unable to sort of see the reality. But people are sort of so stuck in those mindsets that huge things like all of these documents coming out are just, nobody really cares. I mean, I don't know. Is that your sense, Chuck, or am I being just overly pessimistic?
Well, no, I don't think you're being overly pessimistic, because what was strategically done here and is observable, again, stepping back as much as I can, is that while we are digging through these things and discovering this stuff, the corporate media is not going to cover it, okay? It's just not going to happen. They're going to allow a little bit of something to be said in the very earliest time period when nobody's had the opportunity to actually go through them. And by the time we get these things together, we are again these lone voices out there saying, I have documentation, and other people are going to say, well, that should have made headline news. It didn't. So there goes half of your crowd right there, right? That are going to say, well, now I got to read through this stuff, and I actually have to understand what he's saying because somebody didn't put it together in a 10-minute bit for me, or in a 5-minute piece for me on TV. So I don't get it. They didn't make a YouTube video that was only 3 minutes long. And sometimes you can't, because there's a bunch of pieces to be put together in a puzzle. Now, it's interesting to me that, again, with the Hollywood thing, there you go, another corridor of our society that could be permeated by individuals that were recruited from outside. What were the Nazis very good at, again, objectively? Well, I could say that they had some very good filmmakers, and they had some very good propagandists, because to this day, people are still debating why the German population acquiesced to XYZ, why it is they put up with this, that, and the third thing, why it is they allowed one man to seize power even though there was a structure of government there previously that shouldn't have had that happen. How did all this happen? People are still asking that question, and it's being debated by mainstream historians and even conspiracy theorists. Some of them, claim Hitler's a hero now. But regardless, there's a debate. How did this all come about? It seems as though there is a bit of an art form to propaganda, to the dissemination of information, that if you bury things in the right way, you can do it right in front of, the majority of the crowd, and most people are not going to catch the magician's trick. As I said, with the initial document dump here, now we're going to return to JFK. With the initial document dump, they immediately had on what? The usual suspects, the Gerald Posners, the, whatever. Oh, nothing to see here. It was all Oswald. Here's some more crap. And, hopefully these conspiracy theorists will stop now. But I don't think they will, because they enjoy this. Actually, I don't. It's not a joy for me. And it's not a joy for most of us. It's one of those things where we have a mission and we want to accomplish it. And some people spend their entire lifetimes accomplishing very little or putting things together that hardly anybody knows about, but the reality is that, we want the truth. We demand it, and we believe that it is attainable. Now, is it attainable solely through your government? No. So anybody who's waiting for that, oh, wow, the CIA lays it out right here. Here's the killers and here's who paid for it. And that's not going to happen. But it is going to be people like me and people like much smarter than me that are going to put these things together. And eventually we're going to have something where it's going to be like, hey, listen, here's all this documentation. You're only missing a couple of pieces to the puzzle, and there's a reason why those pieces are missing. Now, the narrative is going to be controlled. It's been controlled, and the crash was even controlled here regarding these documents because, first of all, they withheld some. They played a little shell game. Trump tells his true believers that he released everything, so they're checked off the list. Most people that rely on the mainstream media believe that this already happened. It's over and done with. They're checked off the list, regardless of what their partisanship is. And who does that leave? Well, that leaves those of us outside of the box. And some of us outside of the box are being misdirected to think that this is actual proof of. And we're being given what? Oh, right, those poorly supported theoretical things so that they can collapse of their own volition later on. So what is left then among the entire populace of people that are even bothering to listen now? Because how complex is this mess? Not very many people are left to care. This is why we have to keep it going and keep the conversation going. And this is why, for as long as I'm going to do what I'm going to do, this has to be part of the conversation. I am not going to let go of this bone. I am that dog that will not let go of the bone. And, until I am bones, and hopefully somebody else, another dog will come along and take my bone, and eventually we'll be able to bury that sucker. So that's where I'm at with it. I hope I answered your question as fully as possible. I think it was necessary to address the propaganda and dissemination and controlled media side of it because this is the truth that people are ignoring that's right in front of their faces. Like I said, they can go find out for themselves right now that I'm telling you that, oh, well, gee, they said they released, 3,000 and 12,000 and yeah, okay, so put them all together. If they released 20,000, they didn't even give you half of what we know is there. And here's the problem. A whole lot of stuff, we don't know what's in it. We don't know what's actually behind the walls. You know what I'm saying? The reason why it's classified is because, well, that's classified.
Yeah, and right, yeah.
How many things are classified? I can't tell you. Why is that? Because it's classified. This is the circular dog chasing his tail. I know I'm doing dogs here a lot, but it's because mine barked a few times. The dog chasing the tail is what we're meant to keep doing. And I'm not about that. I think that we still have the opportunity and the ability to get to the bottom of a lot of things. And it's great to have some of these confirmations, Pearson. I'm sure there's more of those coming. But is anybody going to notice? Is it just going to be us who's going to have to keep pushing this boulder up the hill to let people know this stuff? Is it just going to be James Corbett that, really wants to interview me about this? Is it just going to be you that wants to talk to me about this? Or can we get this out to everybody? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to battle the entire system because, like I said, corporate media, the government control, then you have the controlled opposition. Gee, what's left? Well, there's a couple of random idiots, I guess, that listen to my show, and I love you guys for it because you're actually searching for something different. And there's a couple of others that listen to your show, and I love you guys too because, again, if you're listening to Pierce Redmond, you're thinking for yourself, congratulations. But there's very few of us out here actually trying to do work, Pierce. So you go.
Well, absolutely. And I was just going to say, I mean, it seems like that, unfortunately that audience is diminishing more and more as we become just turned into these politicized robots for, whatever the latest stupid fucking political crazes, and we all have to kind of just jump on that bandwagon. So anyway, Chuck Ochelli, thank you for joining me. Of course, you can find all of Chuck's work at Ochelli.com, and I will be on Chuck's show later tonight, so definitely tune into that. But anyway, I will be back in a few minutes with more on the Bin Laden files, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys because they have all the technology. They have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. I'll give you an example of that. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom, and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are joining us right now, you've got me solo again for a full hour. But in the first hour, we were talking with our good friend Chuck Ochelli all about the JFK Lancer Conference, of course, where Chuck spoke, and about this document dump of JFK files. And that's going to be a bit of a segue for our topic here in the second hour. But very quickly, I just wanted to a bit of housekeeping and stuff because people have been asking me. If you've signed up on Patreon or been on my Patreon recently, you will notice that some of the rewards have changed a little bit. So obviously, for $1 a month, you get access to the bonus podcast, and all the way up at the $5 level, which is now the gold level. I know these names are really just wanted to, separate this. So it's like bronze, silver, gold. I know it's like really dumb. Well, I'll think of some more clever names for the reward, levels. But at the gold level, at $5 a month, you get to vote on upcoming topics on the show. So some people have asked me how that's going to work out, and I'll try to finally do a full explainer and put it up on Patreon. But for everybody that's sort of interested in that, so basically, patrons will vote on future topics for me to cover here on the show. And hopefully that will be on the live show, but it might be, maybe sometimes it might just be for Patreon subscribers. We'll figure that out as we move along. But basically, I will offer up some ideas on shows that I'm interested in doing that haven't, and I want to hear from all of you out there as well. So if you are I guess technically anybody can send in ideas, or anybody on Patreon can send in ideas, and we'll keep it to just Patreon people, and then we'll kind of narrow it down to maybe like 3 or 4, and then everybody at the $5 level will get to vote on topics. I will say that if you're at the $5 level, you're going to get preferential treatment. So, your ideas will be, featured first, and, we'll see how that works. I know people are a little sometimes hesitant to offer up suggestions and stuff like that, but please don't be. Basically, you can send me all of that kind of stuff through Patreon Messenger. That's the easiest way. It's okay if you want to email me. That's always fine as well. But I think on Patreon it'll be a little simpler that way. So basically, if you're at the $5 level, please send me some ideas for shows you'd like me to cover. And again, if you're a subscriber on Patreon, feel free to send me some ideas as well, and we'll toss those around and see what we can do. And I do have some plans for introducing a $10 level, and my idea for that is to have a Google Hangout or something of that manner, where it would be like a live stream kind of Q&A where anybody could ask me questions. I could talk about whatever sort of topic they want to know. They can be personal questions. They can be, about, geopolitics. They can ask me anything they want to ask, an OJ question, whatever it may be. We would do that maybe for like an hour and a half or something like that. So if you're interested in that, let me know, because that is my next sort of idea for goal. And Tom and I might actually be doing something like a joint sort of a Q&A type thing like that for our Patreon subscribers. So we'll see how that works. And of course, it'll be if we get enough. I mean, it would be, a little weird just having a one-on-one conversation, with somebody. So we'll see how that kind of pans out. But that is something I'm thinking about. So let me know if you like that idea. Of course, I just wanted to remind everybody that the latest Patreon bonus podcast is out, and also to encourage people. If I know it was a holiday time with Thanksgiving and stuff like that, people were away or were working and stuff. But the last week's episode was one of my favorites in a long time, and that was with former Scientologist and great Scientology critic and writer John Atack. And I will be having John back on in the near future to discuss his latest book, which is Opening Minds, which is all about mind control, brainwashing, undue influence, cults, and things like that. And of course, John works at the Opening Minds Foundation. So check out that episode. It's a very different episode from ones that I've done covering Scientology. And of course, we get into we kind of move away from Scientology towards the end, and we talk much more about the Opening Minds Foundation, the whole sort of process or phenomenon of undue influence on society in general. So very interesting episode, one that I liked a lot. John was a great guest, and it was a huge pleasure to finally get him on the show. But we're going to have him back on again soon, so definitely look out for that. But without further ado, I guess we can get to the meat and potatoes of the second hour here. So as I was saying earlier, I wanted to talk about this recent release that happened on November 1st, 2017, so earlier this month. The CIA released a massive treasure trove of documents, images, computer files. They totaled somewhere in the neighborhood of 470,000. And these were recovered during the 2011 May 2nd raid in Abbottabad, Pakistan, that killed Osama Bin Laden, allegedly. We're going to discuss, we'll get into why I say allegedly and whatnot, but this has come to pass. Now, these documents have been withheld since then, since 2011, and they've released little drips and drabs, a couple pages here and there. There was a release, I think, in 2012. There was also back May 20th, 2015. There was the ODNI, Office of the Director of National Intelligence. They released some documents from their collection. There was a few others here and there back in March 2016. There were some more releases. But basically, the CIA has been sitting on this 470,000 documents, images, computer files, and whatnot. And audio as well. There's quite a few audio recordings on this. But they've now been released. They're up on the CIA's website. We'll link up to that in the show notes. But if you just Google November release, Abbottabad material, something or just CIA Bin Laden files, you will find a link to the CIA's website where you can download the files and whatnot. Now, much like with the JFK stuff, but even more so because there's so much in this. This will take years and years to actually comb through. Most, if not all, of these documents are in Arabic, so that's the first hurdle right off the bat. The CIA has not produced, as far as I know, any sort of translated version of the material. It's certainly not, the audio and none of the images as well, the text-based stuff. Nothing in terms of a translation of that. So that already is really difficult. There's also quite a lot of useless information, just straight crap in this. So there are funny cat videos. There are all sorts of weird GIFs. People have when the media occasionally reports on this, they talked about the fact that he had, there was porn on there, that there were videos of Tom and Jerry. Apparently somebody in that compound loved the Charlie Bit Me YouTube clip that was downloaded on and saved on one of the hard drives. There were tons of Hollywood movies, including the Ice Age trilogy, the cartoon movies. There's lots of innocuous family photos in there. There's articles on crocheting. And, of course, my personal favorite was that there was a ton of anime found on the hard drives there. Not any good anime, nothing I would recommend, very mainstream stuff like Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. And there was also some interesting erotic Japanese video games, Euro games, some hentai-related material. So there's a lot of stuff that's, while I guess interesting in terms of figuring out whose this was and what was going on in this house, there's just a lot of kind of garbage in all of these files. And then tucked away in this are supposedly, because I don't know quite, we'll get into this, but some Al-Qaeda documents that are important for research purposes. There is also Bin Laden's diaries are in here that you can download as a separate thing. His journals you can download separately from the rest of this huge cache of files. And so, it's going to take a lot of time to kind of go through all of this. Now, for the most part, I would say this is even less talked about than the JFK stuff. Nobody is really talking about what's in these Abbottabad files. And the only organization that has really been following this and been pushing since 2011 for the release of this is the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, FDD, the wonderful neoconservative think tank that runs the Long War Journal, which is something that I always recommend. It is a great resource. And Tom Jocelyn and Bill Raggio, who run the Long War Journal, have been pushing for these files to be declassified. And as I said, they've been lobbying since 2011 for the release. They were actually given early access directly, listening to them speak about this in various interviews, that, Mike Pompeo himself, declared that FDD would have early access to this treasure trove ahead of the November 1st release. So FDD has written about a few of their kind of early findings within this. And right off the bat, we enter into this sort of strange world revolving around the release of these documents and the way in which we're sort of meant to accept and interpret certain, truths about this. So while admitting that there's 470,000 documents, images, computer files, audio, movies, all this sort of stuff, that is all in Arabic, okay, that it will take years to actually comb through, yet FDD, with their early access to this, has some very important early findings about this. So the big one that you will hear over and over again if you watch interviews with either Raggio or Jocelyn, or if you read up about it on the Long War Journal or things like that, is that Bin Laden was not the, quote, lion in winter that was put out there by all sorts of counterterrorism analysts and military officials and things like that, but that he was actually fully in charge of day-to-day global operations of Al-Qaeda. And then this is the impression that Long War Journal has put forth, that he was actually he was micromanaging everything from loosely affiliated Al-Qaeda groups in Mali to Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb to their Iraq branch, to Al-Shabaab, everybody. Well, not Al-Shabaab, but, related groups in Somalia, and certainly operations in Pakistan and things like that. That bin Laden was fully in control of all of this, and we'll get to the problems with that. The FDD has made a big deal about photos of Hamza bin Laden as a young man, which is interesting for people that really kind of follow Al-Qaeda and whatnot. Hamza bin Laden is sort of like the heir apparent of bin Laden, and he is a huge sort of recruitment tool that Al-Qaeda uses, especially online. Hamza bin Laden is seen as is always depicted as a child. They only use young photos of Hamza bin Laden. It's believed that this is for security reasons, that Al-Qaeda doesn't want to reveal anything about Hamza bin Laden, what he looks like, things like that. So they always portray him as a kid, but he's always, seen as this sort of the mythical, son of the great leader bin Laden. That is the sort of propaganda purpose of Hamza bin Laden. Well, apparently, there are photos of him from a wedding from a few years ago, so we get to see a glimpse of an older Hamza bin Laden. There's also lots of files detailing Al-Qaeda's role in Iraq during the early stages of the war and shortly thereafter, and actually I think it leading all the way through until the formation of ISIS. That again FDD has talked quite a bit about. And probably most sensational is this 19-page document written by a senior operative assessing their relationship, their meaning Al-Qaeda's relationship with Iran. And this is, of course, is probably the only sort of aspect of this document dump thus far that's been reported with any sort of regularity. Everybody loves to hear about how Iran and Al-Qaeda are best friends and that they're working together. And I will say, if you just listen to the sound bites of this, there's almost none of the kind of complexity involved with all of the relationship. And there is something of a relationship between at least factions within Iran and factions of Al-Qaeda. That does exist. But there is this 19-page document where they talk about this. When you read about it, they always sort of couch that with bin Laden's. There's a quote from bin Laden where he referred to Iran as, quote, the main artery for funds, personnel, and communication for Al-Qaeda. That's always sort of talked about. But those are the sort of main things that FDD has talked about, and basically those are the only things that anyone has talked about, because nobody, oddly, is really kind of going through what's in all these documents. So, First off, I'll quickly just talk about the relationship between Iran and Al-Qaeda, because that is one that always kind of gets talked about. I think that there is something there. If you listen to Tom Jocelyn, this isn't actually really all that controversial or new. The Obama administration, Treasury Department, sanctioned and called out all sorts of people in Iran for ties to Al-Qaeda. Take that with a grain of salt if you want to, It is also politically advantageous to link Iran and Al-Qaeda together, and I don't think that it's a coincidence that Trump wants to decertify Iran and Mike Pompeo, who does not like Iran whatsoever, head of the CIA, decides to release these documents and, of course, gives early access to the Long War Journal, which is always talks about Iran and Al-Qaeda, whatnot. But there is something there. If you listen to the squabbles between ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they both admit to some degree that they have a relationship with Iran. So there's a famous communique where ISIS called out Al-Qaeda as being soft on Iran, that they said, well, you use all these safe houses and the Iranian intelligence services know about them and you don't attack Iran. And Al-Qaeda's response was, well, yes, that's true, but so do you. So that there is something there, and I think it is fairly, it makes sense, it makes sense given the context of all this stuff, and I think there's actually a very easy explanation for this. I believe, it's my opinion, that the intelligence services in Iran do know what's going on. They are aware of al-Qaeda operatives moving around there. And I think they have some kind of a tacit agreement with them that you can move in and out of Iran. You can even maybe, recruit people or you can raise funds. You can do that kind of stuff. But there are rules. You cannot attack anything within the borders of Iran. We've never seen al-Qaeda do that. Maybe there is something about if you want to move troops through, or operatives through Iran, that's one thing. We don't want you to recruit people within Iran. We need you to respect this and that. You need to give us information. If there's some sort of, I'm sure it's sort of like any kind of formal police-like force and a criminal organization, you're going to give little tidbits. Did some al-Qaeda operative learn something in Syria about an ISIS cell that might be of use to the IRGC? Okay, maybe you give them a little bit of information. And obviously Iran fights al-Qaeda in places like Syria, like Yemen. That certainly exists. So it's not like they're peachy keen. And to the credit of the neocons at the Long War Journal, they admit that as well. But of course, the headline is simply Iran and al-Qaeda, best friends forever, therefore we must bomb Iran. Not the complexity of there's a fuller picture here. There is a tacit agreement, but there are, limits to that agreement. So I just wanted to kind of present that because I think I think there is something to this, but of course it's much more complex than a simple agreement. Again, there were always rumors back in the 70s that the CIA was protecting or paying off the PLO to basically stay away from American targets, and that's not even that out there. That's like even in what the Steven Spielberg Munich movie. There's an oblique reference to that actually happening. And that happens all the time. There are also, governments are willing to work with, tolerate all sorts of political groups, provided that there's an incentive in it for them. There are no al-Qaeda attacks. There's really no terrorism within Iran. It's extremely rare. I think that's something, that all of these groups respect, and through that respect, they are granted some perks in Iran. And that's the Taliban uses Iran in a similar manner as well. So this is, and again, it's this, I know everybody wants to think of Iran as just some sort of great savior, and this alternative power to Western imperialism, and there is some truth to that, but you also have to be realistic. But let me just take a sip of water here. Looking at these documents specifically, there are a couple of huge questions. The first and big one for me was, should we actually trust these documents? And this boils down to a couple things. One, we live in an age of information warfare, as admitted by the CIA and everybody else. Information is now always weaponized. So the CIA giving us 470,000 documents, it's safe to assume that there is some stuff in there that is probably a red herring or something like that. But more so, should we trust these documents in the sense of, well, was Bin Laden even there? It's still not really clear if Bin Laden was killed. There's no official confirmation of this. There's no body. There's no photos. There's conflicting stories about what actually transpired on May 2nd in Pakistan. Who shot first? Who did this? Was he buried at sea? Was he not buried at sea? I mean, these are still not hard and fast facts. We don't really know this, and you can see that the CIA was willing to put out all sorts of different stories in the immediate aftermath, and I think that was purposeful so that we just sort of he was killed, and maybe he was at sea, but it doesn't really matter because he's dead. So the first thing is, of course, if he wasn't there, okay, then are these documents just one big media operation? Is this just designed to enforce a particular narrative that the media will slowly pick up and then disseminate to the general public? I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility here. Again, if Bin Laden wasn't actually there, if he was either killed earlier or is somewhere else or whatever, I would say, probably if he wasn't there, he was probably dead already. Then what are these documents even? Should we trust anything about this? If the man who's supposed to be possessing them wasn't even actually there in Abbottabad. So that's the first one. I don't think we can really answer it any more than that. Second question, or sort of observation as well, is 470,000 documents, images, computer files, all this stuff. That's a hell of a lot of stuff. Now, of course, no one has ever, they never make it totally clear when you're reading these articles, but these are not all just hard drives. A lot of what's on the CIA's website are also just simply, photocopied images of letters, of newspaper articles, reports, things like that. So, that begs the question, if the raid happened, the way we were told it does, is it even possible for these Navy SEALs to have actually gotten 470,000 documents, images, computer files, all this stuff? If those were, even if they were, it was all hard drives, that's a lot of hard drives, I mean, and it's not, I don't think Bin Laden necessarily had 5 or 6 external hard drives just out there ready to just pick up and put in a bag and fly away. I mean, we're talking about desktop computers. We're talking about files, literal physical files. We're talking about audio recording. So cassettes, MP3s, were these little reporter recorders, that you see with a little tiny tape. Are these CDs? Vinyl, whatever it may be. And again, Zero Dark 30 and No Easy Day, which is the first, big kind of book about this, they both describe only having a few minutes to gather stuff. And they're just rushing and grabbing stuff. So, is it actually even possible that they gathered up the 470,000 documents, images, computer files, audio recording, all this stuff in just a matter of a few minutes? So again, raising the question of, what are these files even? What are we actually looking at? Because, if they only had a few minutes to grab this stuff, presumably there's a ton more stuff that was left there. Did the Pakistanis get access to that? If the Pakistanis recovered them, did they share them with the Americans? Probably. I would assume so. There might be a few things they might have, accidentally destroyed, but one would assume that at some point the Americans got access to them. Are those part of this initial dump? No idea. It's, no one has said one way or the other. So, again, already, as Chuck was saying in the first hour, we have no idea how many documents are not being included. And of course, there's no way that, all of these documents that are being, I'm sure there's stuff that the CIA is holding back. Of course, the line is, here's everything. That's not all of it. So, again, what are we actually looking at here? And this sort of goes to the heart of this whole issue that I have with this, is that if we're talking about all these documents coming out, but then, we have to talk about the raid itself. And when we start talking about the raid itself, suddenly the whole story begins to crumble rather fast. When you only have a few minutes to gather up all these files, it seems almost impossible that you would be grabbing up as much as from what we can tell that's been released. So then that begs the question, were the Navy SEALs there for longer? Maybe it wasn't just a few minutes. And again, this is all speculation, and I know that it's not always the best thing, but if it was more than a few minutes, why haven't we been told that? Did anything else happen? If they only gathered up a if it was just a few minutes, then they were either super lucky, they hit all the great hot spots to get dirt, and files and whatnot on Bin Laden, or there's tons of stuff that was left there. Was that destroyed? Was that acquired by the Pakistanis? Did the Pakistanis share it with us? Are we seeing some of those files incorporated into this recent release? And suddenly, you start to wonder, this again, kind of brings me back to that, was Bin Laden even there? What are we actually seeing with these documents? Is any of this real? Should we be believing any of this stuff, or is this all designed to create the next narrative that they want to put out there? Now, here's another big one. There's no internet or phone service in the Abbottabad compound. Remember, this is the whole heart, the crux of this whole narrative that has been turned into movies like Zero Dark 30 and books and endless documentaries and articles and stuff. There was no internet or phone service. So that's why they couldn't find Bin Laden. They weren't even sure Bin Laden was really there. Remember, this is the whole issue with the courier. Nobody saw anyone go in and out. There's no internet connection, no phone lines. So NSA, GCHQ, nobody could actually definitively say, well, here it's Bin Laden because, he's using this email address, or, we tapped his phones and this is a known number of Bin Ladens. There's nothing like that. So where did all these files come from? And this is one that, full disclosure, Tom Secker brought up to me, this whole idea. If there's no phone lines, there's no internet connection, then where did all of these files come from, these computer files? Where it was, they haven't been totally clear about, like, for instance, all the movies that were found, like Ice Age, Ants, a whole bunch of just schlocky Hollywood crap. Were these downloaded off the internet, or were they DVDs? The anime, is that downloaded off the internet? These YouTube videos, those had to be downloaded off the internet. All of these weird cat GIFs, or GIFs that Bin Laden or somebody in that house had, those had to come from the internet. There are tons and tons of stuff that had to have been downloaded, okay? Now, how were they down? There were computer games and stuff like that. How did Bin Laden get this? Again, what are we actually seeing here? Is this even, is this real? Because look at it this way. A lot of this stuff that had to have been downloaded. So either there were phone lines and an internet connection, which is totally believable, and we just weren't aware of it. I'm sure that might be one thing, intelligence failure, or we were just, looking the other way. That this whole idea that they weren't connected to the outside world is total BS. Because otherwise, the logical explanation is, I guess, somebody else was downloading these and, I don't know, saving them onto a thumb drive or an external hard drive, and then bringing them into Bin Laden's house, and then, taking them, and then he put them on his hard drive, and then they left. Or he, this stuff was, downloaded years or months ago when he wasn't in Abbottabad, and he'd just been trekking around the caves of Afghanistan and then presumably all sorts of cities in Pakistan with tons and tons of hard drives filled with all this stuff. So and this again, as I said, goes to kind of the root of this problem, is that when you start unraveling where these documents come from, you start to question the whole narrative that's been put forth. And suddenly the whole thing becomes so murky. So again, no internet, no phone line. Where's he getting this? This brings me to the other kind of big question for me when I was looking at this. If Bin Laden was there, right? Let's assume he was there, okay? And he really was fully in charge of all of the global operations of Al-Qaeda. And that is apparently the prevailing narrative that's come out through the disclosure of all these documents. Now, the people saying this, people at FDD, and I'll link up to a very good presentation that they did at FDD talking about this, and they break this down, and it is interesting to hear them because, of course, they give much more nuanced answers. When it's when they're they have the time and they're in the type of crowd that goes to see a lecture from them. They give much more complex, nuanced answers, but they still admit that. Not only was Bin Laden in charge of all these global operations, but that this was all being conducted by hand-delivered mail. Now, just let that sink in for a minute. It's crazy, right? It's crazy to think that Bin Laden was sitting in a cave with a satellite phone in Afghanistan, running all of the 9/11. Let's say, for instance, that on its face seems a little bit nutty. And even lots of, people, advocates of the war on terror, they don't fully buy into that story anymore either. You can hear, them at this FDD thing talking, I never really believed Bin Laden was in a cave. He was probably always in a mid-sized city in Pakistan. And that's probably where, Zawahiri is. Okay, so that's one thing. But instead, Bin Laden was day-to-day operations. They talk about there's an instance in, I think it was in Mali, where some, an Al-Qaeda branch in Mali, one of these franchise, I don't even think it was necessarily AQIM, but a smaller offshoot that was still, loyal to Bin Laden and was, receiving orders directly from Bin Laden. They had kidnapped two Austrian tourists or nationals living in Mali. It was a fairly big deal. They were held for a year, pretty horrible conditions. And the Austrian government, was basically paid to get them released. They paid them I think 2 million euros or $2 million, something like that, for the release of that. And there are what we're told are these handwritten letters back and forth between that group and Osama Bin Laden in Abbottabad, Pakistan, okay, talking about, well, you've got to be able to control this PR, this Bin Laden, we don't want it to come out that, we're taking money and things like that and blah, blah, that will, it'll make us look bad or it'll make us just look like criminals. Okay, so again, there's a man or several men who are taking letters from Abbottabad, Pakistan, okay, all the way over to Mali in West Africa, all right? Here's the letter. I mean, this is not fucking Game of Thrones, all right? It's not like people don't send ravens anymore. That's just, I don't believe that. I do not believe for a second that Osama Bin Laden was in charge of global operations through, by writing letters that were hand-delivered. This would take weeks, if not months, for this information to travel. We live in a world where there's a new news story every less than 24 hours a day. countries and things can go bankrupt in the blink of an eye. Stock trades, can rise and fall in a literal nanosecond. Okay. There's, an hour in politics now is it changes every minute. There's no way that Osama bin Laden was sending out letters all over the world, to Yemen, to Somalia, to Mali, to Iraq, to Syria, to Afghanistan. And this is how he was running day-to-day operations. It's just insane. There's no way. Things would change. He could send a letter saying, all right, don't take the 2 million euros from the Austrian government. And the group in Mali could have already taken the 2 million euros and probably spent it all, and then the letter would arrive. I mean, it's insane. So, and that to me is really like one of the kind of my real issues with all of this. And again, I keep kind of returning to this. When you begin to question the logic that has been presented with these documents, the whole story begins to make zero sense. So again, bin Laden was using fucking carrier pigeons, ravens like Game of Thrones to send messages. I mean, sending a raven would probably be faster than these guys. I mean, and then, is this the one courier? We're always told about the courier. This is how they figured it out. That he was in this house in Abbottabad. It's through the courier and blah, blah, blah. Was it one guy? One guy, he traveled from Pakistan to Mali, or from, and then maybe from Mali to somewhere else. Maybe he heads to Algeria, pick up some stuff there and then go back. I mean, is it one guy? Is it a network of guys? I mean, are these people still out there? Has anyone tried to find them? Nothing. We get nothing from that. So this led me to thinking in a slightly different direction, because we can say that, well, none of this makes sense, therefore all of these documents are sort of a lie. Or they might be true, but, there's a story behind this story in that, well, it's not bin Laden. I mean, whose documents were these? Who they belong to? But listening a little bit differently, what if Osama bin Laden really was alive this whole time, okay, and he was living in Abbottabad, Pakistan, but it was under some sort of like a de facto house arrest? And maybe it wasn't just this one house in Abbottabad. I assume maybe they moved, saying he's alive, maybe they moved to different safe houses, all over Pakistan, not in huge cities, but medium to small size cities where he could kind of blend in or nobody would notice. That's possible. But that he was under some sort of a house arrest, that he wasn't, he was sort of being held by his CIA, ISI handlers. Then he probably wasn't, it is true that he was a lion in winter, that he wasn't really running Al-Qaeda, because if he was under house arrest, I mean, they wouldn't need him. He would have no real power, if he was alive. And that might be true. And then he was basically just killed for public relations, purposes. It was advantageous for Obama to kill bin Laden. He served no purpose anymore. He was not actually in control of day-to-day global operations of Al-Qaeda. It was an election year. It made Obama look tough and, especially tough on terrorism. Clinton and Bush, they couldn't find bin Laden, but, Obama not only found him, but killed him. So that is entirely possible. And maybe the famous images that we saw of bin Laden, with a blanket over him, sitting on the floor watching old reruns of him on CNN. Maybe that really was true. That was his life. That is what happened to him. And I don't know. I certainly almost always kind of fell into the camp of he wasn't there. Excuse me. He had been killed earlier or something like that. But I don't know. looking at the documents that have come out and the way that they've been talked about, it does make you wonder if perhaps he was alive, but was truly irrelevant. Because there's just no way that he could do without internet, without phone communication. There's no way he was running all these things through letters and things like that. And second off, I mean, there's no proof that any of these letters are really authentic. First off, they're all in Arabic. Okay, so the vast majority of us are not going to be able to read them. Most researchers, the only people that are going to translate them are going to be groups like FDD, Long War Journal. So, I mean, we already have to be a little weary about, their translations, and, a lot can be lost in translation with this sort of stuff. Maybe, these documents are some real, some not so real, or, or they're all kind of creations. But I don't think we can completely dismiss the idea that maybe Bin Laden was alive, but that he really wasn't in control. And these documents are yet another attempt to this is the strange sort of doublethink that is very prevalent in the counterterrorism community when it comes to Osama bin Laden. He is either an omnipotent force of pure evil, who's a genius, right? Who does can do all these things, or he's a bumbling idiot, with dialysis, who actually has no power, who looks at porn, and he's as flawed as all of us, and he sits alone, freezing his ass off with a blanket on, watching himself on clips from CBS and CNN and things like that. And they can go back and forth between that whenever they want to. We've still never really had a definitive. So at the moment right now, we're back into the Bin Laden was the global mastermind of terrorism all over the world, who was micromanaging everything from the large, big franchises like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula all the way down to small, little, minute cells working in West Africa or something like that. So they love to kind of go back and forth between all of this, Bin Laden can be basically, again, just so common in politics and oddly within, the terrorism world. It's like, being there. I've made this comparison all the time. These people can become whatever you want to project on them. So Bin Laden can be alone, watching himself on TV, or he can be, furiously writing letters dictating how, policy and negotiations are going to be run. So very interesting. And I don't know. I'm genuinely not sure what to think, with the release of all this stuff. And I am going to go through some more of it. I will say, there's two more things I wanted to mention. One of them is a word of warning, a caution. When the CIA first put up all these documents on their website, people might have noticed they took them down almost immediately. This was because they never actually vetted these documents, and there was tons of malware all over them. Okay? And when Long War Journal received the documents ahead of time, all their computers were infected with malware. Okay? So this is bizarre in and of itself. That is nobody going through this at the CIA? If there is malware, where is that malware from? Okay? There has to be a digital footprint, a fingerprint of this malware. Was this who created this malware? Does this trace back to some Saudi hacker? Does this trace back to the IRGC in Tehran? Does this trace back to Langley, Virginia? I mean, where is this malware from? Can they not determine anything about this? And if you go to the CIA's website right now, they say, well, we took it off, after the initial posting due to malware, and we removed it. But we cannot guarantee that all malware has been removed. So they haven't even really gone through all this. So that is so bizarre too, that the CIA is putting up material that can infect your computer. And they can't really, no guarantees, download at your own risk. So be careful about that. Definitely. I don't, or your Norton antivirus or whatever is going to start freaking out about this. But, there you go. And the other big thing is, if Bin Laden was truly in that compound, right? And this is if he was, or even if you want to present the idea that he was, and maybe he had been killed years before. Where are his wives that were in the Abbottabad house? And this, again, a huge one, because in these documents there's tons of, there's manuals about how to crochet. There's, all sorts of silly movies. There's lots of Bollywood films. There's a lot of stuff that appear to have been from Bin Laden's wives. So that, of course, just instantly made me think again, where are his wives? This was the part of the story that when it first happened, this is why I was like, well, either he wasn't there or there's something much larger here, because what happened to them? So they were able, they drop into this compound, right? They kill a whole bunch of people, including Osama bin Laden himself. They drag his body on. 470,000 documents, images, audio, computer files. They get all that stuff, but they don't take any of the other people alive there. His wives, who have been by his side through all of this. Can you imagine the sort of just raw intelligence that you could gather from something like this? And then what happens to his wives? Nobody really knows. The Pakistanis supposedly pick them up, and then they get deported to Saudi Arabia. So, so did the ISI interrogate them about anything? Did the Saudi intelligence interrogate them about anything? Are the Saudis holding back right now? How has no journalist attempted to track down these women? Now, I understand the Bin Laden family is notoriously secretive, but it just nobody has thought about this. And again, these women would have been with him even just for a strictly, not superficial, but not necessarily even about, day-to-day terror operations, but who was Bin Laden? What was his daily routine like? Were they allowed internet access? Did they ever leave the compound? What did they know? I mean, again, if the war in Syria turned the other way by, tomorrow night, and Assad and his wife are captured, you're going to tell me that the American intelligence services aren't going to be just, foaming at the mouth waiting to interrogate Assad's wife? I mean, all of, when it's someone, an evil foreign dictator or something like that, the wives are always, they know the real stuff. I mean, look at Robert Mugabe right now, and the way, Grace Mugabe, is being treated. She knows everything. She was going to rule Zimbabwe after Robert Mugabe stepped down, so she has to know information. Yet there's nothing from his wives. We don't know what happened to them. We don't know if intelligence that was gathered by either the Pakistanis or the Saudis. I mean, I would assume definitely with the Saudis, they're going to pass that on to the U.S. But how has that not been talked about, even referenced? Again, I mean, there's nothing. And this is just yet another part of the story that begins to not make any sense. They go in, they murder all these people, they take all these documents somehow in a few minutes, and then they fly out and they just leave all of these witnesses there, and and then soon the Pakistani police and the ISI show up, and then they're whisked away to Saudi Arabia. What did they know? Did they know that it wasn't Bin Laden? Did they know it was something else? Did they know that they were told that they were going to be safe? They clearly it was wrong. They turned on him. So there's a lot of very important questions that are coming out as a result of these documents finally kind of coming to light. And I just hope that people will attempt to kind of explore this and dig deeper and ask some larger questions here, because, as I said, it's fascinating to me that the idea of releasing these documents is to be more transparent and stuff like that, and enhance the public understanding of Al Qaeda. That's a big line that the CIA keeps using. Yet, if anything, I think it just pokes more holes in the raid itself, in the true history of Al Qaeda and of Bin Laden's role in all of this. Was he just a figurehead? How have we gone from him being the figurehead back to the Lion in Winter? Well, anyway, thank you all for listening today. I will be talking to you very soon. I've got some interesting shows on the horizon. So until then, I'll be talking to you very soon.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys because they have all the technology. They have all these great things that they're going to do. But obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Assassination. You know what's interesting about assassination? Well, not only does it change those popularity polls in a big hurry, but it's also interesting to notice who it is we assassinate. Do you ever notice who it is? Stop to think of who it is we kill. It's always people who've told us to live together in harmony and try to love one another. Jesus, Gandhi, Lincoln, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, John Lennon. They all said, try to live together peacefully. Bam! Right in the head. Apparently we're not ready for that. Yeah, that's difficult behavior for us. We're too busy sitting around trying to think up ways to kill each other. Here's one we came up with. It's efficient, too. Genocide, you know? Killing large numbers of people simply because they don't look like you, they don't talk like you, and they don't have the same kind of hats you do. You ever notice that anytime you see two groups of people who really hate each other, chances are good they're wearing different kind of hats. Keep an eye on that. It might be important.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, roger, copy. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.